Audience, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you.
This is my boomstick.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Good evening, and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. We are your hosts.
I'm Daniel LaBona.
And I'm David Ulloa, back after an extended hiatus.
Yeah.
And I was we canceled last episode last minute. Very sorry to all our dedicated fans for that was supposed to be sarcastic about that. And then I couldn't make it the week before, where you and Hunger took a look at Pilgrim.
So much fun with Pilgrim. God,
yeah,
so much fun.
yeah. That episode's out now. I haven't listened to it yet because I want to watch the movie.
Yes.
And I hadn't had a chance to watch the movie. So I know Thanksgiving is over. We're on to Christmas, but I feel like it's time for me to, it's still okay. Like, it's within that window.
Yeah, you're in the window. You're in the window.
Right? But speaking of Christmas, it is Christmas time, and that means holiday horror.
It's yes. From the amazing run that we can have through October. Grab one Thanksgiving movie because there's not a ton. We can't burn through those too fast. and then filling up December with holiday horror is pretty great.
Yeah. So we purposely left a couple of movies off the list last year so that we would have some for this year.
Right.
And it's not that we're getting through all of like the holiday movies this year, but I feel like we're hitting up a lot of the big ones between last year and this year.
Yeah.
So I think we have to start being a little judicious with the ones that we pick moving forward.
That's all right. Next week we're gonna throw you all for a loop anyway. So
yeah,
it's all right.
Yeah. But this is one that I threw out last year because I mean, y'all know me. I'm really into classic horror, classic cinema, classic anything really.
Yeah, just a classic guy.
Right. So we decided let's put it off, and it's Black Christmas, the original 1974 classic.
Yes.
So with this movie, as we get into a little overview, I like to call this section "Ho Ho Horror."
Nice.
So I'm fairly certain that it kind of created the holiday horror genre.
I kind of said that off the cuff on our Instagram, but because I was pretty sure, but I went and did some research, and yeah, I think for the most part, the genre of holiday horror exists because of this movie.
Yeah. And from here, I mean, it's not like it happened right away, because the movie was actually kind of like a sleeper for a while, and it took a while for it to pick up steam. But John Carpenter was a big fan of this movie.
You can tell.
And yes, you can definitely tell. So much so that he went to Bob Clark, which Bob Clark, by the way, like, is Mr. fucking Christmas, because between this movie and A Christmas Story,
yeah,
I mean, he pretty much helps define Christmas, like, holiday television viewing.
I watched this and A Christmas Story on back-to-back nights just because it felt like the right thing to do.
Dude, it is my double feature.
Yeah.
It is. It's a double feature for me. It's two sides of the same coin,
It really is.
And so he went to him and he was like, "Hey, I like this idea of like expanding on like holiday horror. What if I did a Halloween one? Are you okay with that?" And he was like, "Okay."
I don't know holidays. I'm not.
Go ahead.
Dad.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't own the idea. Go ahead and do it. And Carpenter took a lot of ideas from there. The POV shot, the killer view, the really kind of restrained use of music, the final girl, it's all there, including the ambiguous ending.
Yeah.
So he didn't create any of that, by the way, because that all goes back to the giallos of Italy of the late 60s and the early 70s. but making it decidedly Christmas and
Right.
have holiday be at the center there. I mean, it's been called revolutionary. It's been called the first slasher. Does the movie earn its reputation in your eyes?
So I have seen this movie once before, but it was a long time ago, and I don't know if I was like in and out. There a lot of stuff happened that I didn't really remember. Like this might as well have been my first viewing.
Right.
I can't place when I've seen it before, but a lot of this stuff kind of surprised me. Did it earn its reputation? Yeah, man. This is one where you watch this movie and it's a lot like when we did Invasion of the Body Snatchers. When you watch this movie, you see the seeds of what became so many things that are
Those
now
tropes.
tropes.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is, you watch this and you can't say, oh, well, of course he did that. That's a trope. No. The trope is because he did that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think it really did earn its reputation. It was really, I really did enjoy kind of reading some of the backstory about this movie and it getting made and stuff like that. There was some really interesting stuff about just kind of how it kind of flopped when it first came out. A lot of people were calling it kills for kicks, and they weren't a big fan of the ambiguous ending and all this. And now it's getting, I don't think it was ever shit on to the point that like Halloween 3 was, but it eventually did get its resurgence. And people are doing exactly what I did last night, which is going back and watching it and seeing all this stuff that was groundwork. I mean, this movie's the foundation for so many things that we consider to be the most important parts of slashers. It's really interesting to see all of that, but it's also, I think it's got some genuinely scary moments.
Yes, it does.
I think it's got some really good, and I'm not even going to try to claim which wave because I don't know where they all are, but it's got some really great feminist ideals in it. And the idea of this very strong female lead. It's got Margot Kidder. So, I mean,
you can't go wrong with Margot Kidder ever.
Exactly. So I think that the reputation that this movie has as it came back into the public eye and now people are viewing it outside of its time and with a back catalog of all these other things to reference as what it was the daddy of, I think that it's undeniably deserving of its reputation.
I have to agree. I was late to this party. I saw it for the first time maybe 10 years ago. And I don't know if it was Arrow. It was one of those like smaller home release companies that came out with some special edition of it. And it blew me away. I was like, wow, I can't believe that. Like, everyone knows of Black Christmas, even if they've never seen it before.
There's been 3 remakes.
Right. Yeah. So I had seen the 2009 one around the time that it came out. Maybe I saw it in theaters and was thoroughly unimpressed.
As you should.
It was for me, it was a kind of paint by the numbers slasher.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought much of it. And maybe that kind of tainted my view of the original until I finally sat down and watched it. And it fucking blew me away.
Yeah.
I had already become a fan of Giallo's, and I recognized right away. I was like, fuck, he's pulling from Bava, and he's pulling from Argento, and he's pulling from Fulci and all these guys. And then I saw retroactively all of the influence that he would have on guys like Carpenter, guys like Cunningham, guys like Craven.
Yeah.
Because if you look at Wes Craven's early work, 1974, same year this comes out, Last House on the Left is a very different movie than The Hills Have Eyes.
Yes.
It's a very different movie than A Nightmare on Elm Street, even. So you get a change in Craven. You get guys like Sam Raimi that are pulling from this too, and Raimi is a more out there guy. But this idea of like the POV cam,
yes,
the way that it's used, as more than just a a voyeuristic tactic, which I feel is the way it was primarily used in the giallos, as a way to really put you in the killer's mind. Wow. I mean, and it is really terrifying, I think, in times. I'm rarely scared by slashers. I find slashers to be a lot of fun to watch.
Right. Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why I like slashers so much, because you can kind of just turn this off and be like, I'm just going to watch people, get murdered and fuck for like an hour and a half. And that's cool. But when you can be genuinely scared of what's going on screen, like Hereditary does for me,
right,
that kind of elevates a movie. And there's something about how real Billy is as a possible killer, because he is kind of based on Ted Bundy and a couple of these guys who were committing these murders in the late 60s and the early 70s. There's supposed to be a sense of realism there, and I think there is. And the fact that it is just someone on the phone doing their thing,
right?
Like, that's terrifying.
Yeah, that's it's interesting that you mentioned Ted Bundy. There was one thing I ran across while reading about this movie today, and that is in '78 it was going to make its TV debut. They were going to call it Stranger in the House, and it was supposed to be part of this NBC movie night thing. And like right before it was supposed to air, Ted Bundy murdered those girls in the sorority house at Florida State. And so at the last second they pulled it. And they said, no, it would be insensitive to show this right now. We need to do something else. And they ended up showing a Doc Savage movie, which I'm not mad at, but but it's just, it's interesting that, I mean, and that's 4 years after this came out. This is a 74 release. That was 78. And so, but it's interesting that even after that time had passed, that they could still look at this movie and go, yeah, that's going to mess people up with what's going on right now. And they pulled it, which was just, it was fascinating to me, because now, so that's 1978. Now, how many networks, if there were some sort of Christmas season massacre tomorrow, how many networks are going to cash in and be like, we should show Black Christmas now?
Right.
It's like, it's the complete opposite of what things have come are now. And so it was just really interesting to me that there was still that national awareness of trying to be sensitive to the fact that something terrible had just happened. And so
not sensationalizing it.
Yeah, exactly. And not just keep it on the news. So I did find that very interesting. Like I said, there's just a couple bits and pieces about even the making of this movie that are just, it's really cool to read about. I know you're a big older film guy. I am not so much. I'm getting into the older ones is one of the things that I'm loving about doing this show. But I've never really been a big behind the scenes guy until we started doing this, and I started reading about just all the ins and outs sometimes that happened during this. And it really started when we did Evil Dead, and I just got sucked down a rabbit hole of reading everything that went into making that movie. Now I try to find at least one interesting bit about the making of it every time.
Yeah, that's part of what attracts me to movies in the first place, is the making of them.
Right.
And this one does have a really interesting production process, because it's based on a sort of like urban legend of
the babysitter in the phone call.
The babysitter in the phone call. And no one can ever kind of track down like where that really came from.
Right.
And I think it's because it's a scary story that people tell.
Right.
This wouldn't be the last time that they did it either. I think 78 or 79 is When a Stranger Calls, which is another fantastic horror movie.
Yes.
Kind of borders on that thriller, not quite horror, not quite thriller. And again, the whole, the calls are coming from inside the house. But that's where that comes from. So I think even to go back and look at how how this thing is born from like the germ of the idea, where like it influences someone like Roy Moore to say, let me write a movie about this. And then
Right.
Bob Clark sees this and he's like, hey, let me insert my life into this, you know, because like his aunt is the house mother.
Oh yeah, I did run across that.
And he does this for all his movies. Like Porky's is based on like his time in Florida when he was a teenager, you know. So like he's
Which
that
is
kind of
hilarious
guy,
and horrifying.
right? Yeah. Which, by the way, Florida hasn't changed very much.
So speaking of the calls coming from inside the house, that's what we're going to call our next section here. I really want to talk about the fact that, I mean, this, we always go to that idea of something being offensively insert decade here, right?
Mhm.
This movie, I wouldn't call offensively 70s, but it definitely leans hard on that 70s aesthetic. So we've got 70s aesthetic, we've got this tone, we've got the giallo films that you were talking about, and the idea of thrillers, and just Bob Clark taking all of this and creating this movie that you can honestly look back and say, before it, there was nothing like it. So when you watch this movie now, does it work? Did it work then? Does it still work for you?
I think that this is maybe one of the best crafted slashers that we've had on the show, definitely, and of all time, because so much of it makes sense.
Yeah.
And the story follows logically from one thing to the next, and characters behave like real people. No one behaves like oddly stupid to get from one plot point to the next. It's something we talked about with Barbarian that I will continue to talk about until the end of fucking time, because no one fucking behaves that way, you know? And the characters in this movie behave like real people. You know, when Jess gets these phone calls, she's shook. She has no idea what to do with this, so she files a police report.
Yeah.
You know, and she follows up on it. And the police behave like real police officers, where like, yeah, there's some incompetent guys, but there's some good cops, and guys are like, why the fuck didn't you follow up on this thing? Why didn't you tell me about this? You know, I really want to know what happens after the movie to Sergeant, what's his name?
Nash.
Sergeant Nash. What an incompetent
Sergeant Nash
fucker. Oh my God. Like if there's a guy who should not be a police officer, it's Sergeant Nash.
I love that there's a cop who's just credited as laughing police officer, because that's the only thing he does is sit at his desk and laugh at how stupid Nash is, because he knows that the phone number says fellatio and that Nash didn't get it, and he's just laughing hysterically while the lieutenant goes to read it. I love it. Yeah, Nash is like the serious movie version of in Scary Movie, when they did like the mentally disabled brother who just thought he was like a sheriff. Nash is like the
Doofy?
Well, this is a serious Doofus, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like he was God, he was so funny, but because of the fact that he wasn't trying to be funny, like it was just he was so ridiculously incompetent. It was amazing.
He was Farva.
Yeah, there we go. He was Farva.
Yeah, he was Farva before Farva. To me, the story is really what makes this scary. Because there are really no jump scares. You know, this relies totally on atmosphere, and those moments where Billy makes the phone calls, like it's just dialogue.
Yeah.
There's no ambient sound. All you're hearing is the actors, because there were multiple people who did voices, although it was primarily the guy who was cast as Billy, Nick Mancuso. Right. And it's really fucking scary. And these girls behave the way that they should. Fathers are behaving the way that they should.
Right.
Mothers are behaving the way that they should. To me, that's one of the things that really kind of sets this movie apart. And man, I keep going back to those phone calls. They're fucking terrifying,
dude. They're so the phone calls, and they keep escalating, and they keep getting scarier. I mean, honestly, the very first phone call they get, which is essentially just a verbal sexual assault,
Right.
is even scary in itself. Like that first one is just, it's so weird in this age of I don't answer my phone unless it's a name that I know calling me.
Right.
It's such a weird thing to look back and go, man, 50 years ago, people just had to answer the phone and listen to whoever the hell was on the other side.
Right.
Like it's so bizarre. And this idea of these guys that would call and just say filthy things, which, by the way, this movie did not pull any punches on how filthy that language was. Like that dude was dropping C-bombs. Like we cuss on this show and we don't say that word.
No.
And so like, and he was saying it a lot in the most grotesque way possible. And so it was just, so it started there, but then the escalation into the insanity that those phone calls became was terrifying.
And trying to figure out what they mean.
Yes.
Like, okay, so what's the backstory here? And I know that we'll get to it when we get to Billy, but like, that's what to me is like the most scary of everything is like, what the fuck happened to this guy?
Mm-hmm. It's outrageous. Like, I think that this movie is definitely scary because one of the things about this movie is even for a slasher, this feels like this could happen at any moment. I have a very good friend who is terrified of just her attic in general. Right? Like she doesn't like anytime there's a noise, it's like, nope, there's people in the attic. Immediately, I'm like, never watch the movie Black Christmas, right? Like,
or the people under the stairs.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just, but this movie, I mean, what you get a girl who gets killed by dry cleaner bag over her head. Obviously, that's something that can happen. They've got to put a warning label on them. The house mom getting knocked out by just a random piece of junk that's in the attic and then hooked up on it. Yeah, like this stuff can happen. The guy didn't magically teleport up there. We get to see him climb the trellis and get into it. They even say, oh, well, it's a sorority house, so we don't even really lock many of the doors and windows. Like all of this. Nothing in this movie ever felt supernatural. The closest it gets to that is just this idea that one dude can do all these voices, right? But we've all heard people do voices.
But he did Mancuso. He did some like insane acrobatic stuff.
Yes.
While he was recording to get these voices out, and he didn't do them all. Bob Clark did some of the voices as well, but like he would do crazy shit like standing on his head to compress his voice box so that he would get like a more distorted and garbled sound. Like who the fuck thinks of that? Yeah, really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, so when I look at how scary this movie is, that's what it boils down to me. Like this falls into that genre of The Strangers and Hush, right? Yeah. Where you watch this and it's horrifying because it's so painfully realistic, and it's scary because it's one of the things that's scary about it in the kind of the same way that Halloween is scary is these girls, as far as we know, didn't do anything to this dude.
No,
it was just because you were there, right? And it's whenever that becomes the onus that somebody uses for murder, that escalates how scary it is. If it's a revenge thing, if it's whatever, some of that stuff kind of makes sense. When we did the new Texas Chainsaw, it's like, yeah, he killed a lot of people, but also they were dickheads and tried to kick his mom out of their house, right?
Right.
So, like there's some.
I always take a chainsaw to the people that try to kick my mom out of her house.
Yeah, you know what? Probably. So. So just this idea of, well, your window wasn't locked and you were here, and so this is what happened. That's really scary.
You know what else I think is really scary is that when Jess picks up the phone for the first time and he starts doing the whole, fat piggy scene.
Yes.
She says he's calling back.
Yeah. So they've been living it.
So either this is premeditated, which I don't think it is, or that's some commentary on what women have to deal with,
Right.
with like these perverted guys who call. I mean, it's I guess would be the 1970s equivalent of like a random dick pic.
Good call. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, and
I think that is a absolutely
I think that's what that is, because we get that there at the beginning, but then there's also like what the first character to die.
Claire.
Claire, yeah, I was gonna say Cynthia. It's not Cynthia. But I got a C. Coincidentally, wouldn't have made a C if I was at school trying to guess this name. She's made fun of for being like prudish.
Permanent virgin.
Yeah,
professional virgin.
Professional virgin. I fucking love that line. Yeah. Oh, she's a professional virgin. And we'll get to characters, but fucking Barb is outstanding.
Yes.
And then like Barb is called a whore, and then when we find out that Jess is pregnant, she kind of like really asserts herself, and she's like, okay, well, I don't want to keep this. And she's clearly being like forced into keeping this baby.
Right.
He's like, no, we're going to get married. I'm going to take care of the baby. You know how much I want the baby. And John Saxon seems to have picked up on that in one of those phone calls. And he's like, what's this about? And she's like, I don't want to talk about it.
Right.
So I definitely think that the horrors of being a woman are on display in this one. And I think that that's part of it.
Yeah, because there's a whole other element here that's scary, which is how far Patrick will go. Or Patrick, which one is Jeff's boyfriend? Peter. Peter. Yeah, how far Peter is willing to go, because his girlfriend says, no, I'm not going to marry you. I'm not keeping this baby. And you're right, that idea that we see in, now people love to make a movie now and throw up the flag of, ooh, look, feminist horror. But I mean, this movie did that. This movie explored some of those things. And I think you put it really well in saying that one of the scary things about this movie is the horror of being a woman sometimes.
Yeah. So we've in talking about the story, we've talked about characters a lot, and I really think that that's where this movie shines. So let's just go ahead and get into it. I'm calling this section Campus Life.
Love it.
Because I went back and forth, like, should we call it student activities? Should we call it the student body? But when it comes down to it, there's more than just students here.
Right.
Because the police force is a force to be reckoned with here. Right. The really interesting thing here is that there's like a mix of established actors and up and coming actors kind of all thrown in here. And this movie had a budget of $620,000, which is not a lot even back in 1974.
Right.
So to think that they got all these actors together for this one movie, like that's fucking incredible. Was there any actor or actors that left a lasting impression on you?
Well, the initial one is just Olivia Hussey as Jess. I mean, one just absolute bombshell. She
may have been one of my first crushes.
I was just about to say she is definitely one of my first crushes from when I watched Franco Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet when I was in high school.
Yep.
And I mean, if you're a teenage boy and you can watch Zeffirelli's version of Romeo and Juliet and not fall in love with Olivia Hussey, dude, you might like dudes. Like
which is fine,
which is cool. But I mean,
I also know plenty of guys. I also know plenty of guys who like guys and will definitely throw it in there with Olivia Hussey.
Yeah, I mean, she was She did an amazing job. She was beautiful. She was strong when she needed to be. Like I said, there was this whole concept of her staking her place in the world and taking this idea of not letting her boyfriend, not letting or the fact that she got pregnant define her. You know, she says all of those things I told you I wanted to do, I still want to do those things when she's talking to Peter. And so she was incredible. Just the way that she even evolved through the movie. When we first see her those first couple times, at the beginning of this movie, it's kind of hard to tell who the focus is going to be. It's not immediately apparent who is the final girl, who's going to be the main one. And it feels very natural the way that she slides into this final girl role, which is real cool. So she accomplished that real well. But man, I'll never not go to bat for John Saxon. You're muted. You're muted, big dog.
How about
there you
now?
go. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Sorry, I was coughing. I'm getting over a cold and I didn't want to cough into the microphone. Yes, I will fucking die on the hill, John Saxon.
Yes.
All right. Whether it's in like something crazy like Enter the Dragon, or it's right, because he's in fucking Enter the Dragon,
so good.
you know, and or it's something like A Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, he's fucking great in everything.
And I mean, just Stone Cold Fox too. Like 1974, John Saxon is prime dude. Like he's just he does such a good job, because we get so many elements of him. We get this very serious about his police work guy, and he wants to do the right thing and solve this case. We get this guy who is very paternal almost in his interactions with these sorority girls, and he definitely seems to have a lot of interest, because before they even know anything about a killer, he's super interested in just making sure that they don't have to deal with these phone calls anymore. And so he really took that role of just lead detective and made it something worth watching. And he did such a good job. And you get to see him cut up and deal with the dickheads at his police station. You get to see him interacting with parents. He never just completely shuts Claire's dad down. He listens to him and he wants to help him out. He really took this idea of just cop in a slasher flick and made it something to where it was a good role with some depth. You know, there are going to be a lot of times, there have been and will be times on this show where we do slashers, and there's going to be incompetent cop A who could have done XYZ and everything would have been avoided. Lieutenant Fuller, John Saxon, in this movie literally did everything in his power, and the cards still fell exactly where they did. And the fact that John Saxon portrayed all of that believably, loved it. Those were the two for me that stood out the most. Honorable mention to Chris's jawline. That is a strong jaw. That dude can take a punch. It is just firm, square jaw. Also, he looks like a not dwarf-sized version of Peter Dinklage. And the entire time I was looking at him, I was like, this dude looks like he could be Peter Dinklage's dad. Like, he's got got that Tyrion head. It's the exact same head. But man, that's a strong jaw. There's like, no wonder that dude plays goalie for his hockey team, because he's just blocking them all right here. Bah, 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 just throwing that face around.
Yeah, no glass jaw there.
No.
So like you said, I mean, Olivia Hussey for me, she's one of my first loves. Maybe the reason why I care about Shakespeare at all is because of her. But when I think of this movie, the very first character that I think of is Barb. And Margot Robbie, not
Kidder.
Margot Robbie, Margot Kidder. Sorry. I do often think of Margot Robbie.
Don't we all?
Yeah. So this is a couple years before Superman, but she's not a nobody at this time, and she just like it's a very modern character.
Yes.
Like she and Jess play very modern characters, and everything that I know about the mid 70s is that there had been this wave of change that came in the late 60s, and there was this sense of empowerment, but it wasn't really accepted by everyone,
Right.
So to see such strong convictions and strong personality, where like this isn't just like a meek woman, because Claire, was it?
Yeah. Wait, which one? The first one killed with the dry cleaner bag? Yeah, it's Claire.
Yeah, Claire, great character, but she's very meek. She's very mousy. You can tell that she kind of is she doesn't want to rock the boat. That's not Barb. And Barb to me reminds me so much of the friends that I had in high school, the friends that I had in college, the friends that I still have today. And to me, that's part of the reason why she's so endearing, because she is who she is. Like she lays it all out there. And she doesn't give a fuck who it is that she's talking to either, because she's always going to be honest. And I think that everything you need to know about Barb is in your introduction to her, where she's talking to her mom on the phone, and she tells her mother, she says, "You're a real gold-plated whore, mommy."
Yeah.
It's so funny, but it's really true, because we don't know what exactly it is that they're talking about, but you get the impression that it's just like, I don't give a fuck what you have to say.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna do me. You do you.
And she's obviously unimpressed by whatever her money her mom is throwing around, because she's like, oh, who wants to go skiing? My mom's taking us skiing. There's plenty of room. Blah blah blah.
Right,
it's like that was not exciting news for her at all.
Yeah, so she wants to have fun. She's in college. She wants to blaze her own trail. So I don't want to spend too much more time on any particular character, because you kind of touched all the best ones.
Right.
However, no, there was one other you didn't mention. The house mother.
Oh yeah, Miss Mac.
Miss Mac. Holy fuck, what a great character,
dude. Like, you're talking about Bob Clark, like making Porky's. That woman would fit right into Porky's or Animal House. She very easily could have been a character in Animal House. No problem. The exact same character with the exact same lines, doing the exact same things. You just put her in Animal House. She fits right in. It was amazing.
She understood the assignment.
Yes.
She knew exactly what she was supposed to be, and she fucking delivered. And if the scenes of her with the girls were not enough, the moment that she's by herself and she looks at like this frock that they've gotten her, and she said, "I wouldn't wear this to have my liver out."
Yeah. So great. And it's such like a prim and proper old lady thing to do, where even though she's in a sorority house, she doesn't drink like with the girls, but she's got sherry hidden everywhere. So great. There's a moment where she's looking through the closet trying to find it, and she's just kind of mumbling. She's like, damn, she doesn't drink itself. Like, just like stuff like that. She was so much fun, and seemed to fit right in with all of those girls for everything that I know about sorority life, from living here close to campus. It's that, this amazingly eclectic group of girls all being in one place. If that's the way it was, that's not the way it is anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, you go to a sorority, like when you get into a sorority, it's because you're a photocopy of the girls that are there already, or you become one because that's the sorority you really want.
We've all seen the Bama Rush TikToks.
It is I will never get over the fact that like one day I just suddenly get texts from you, Steph, Vanessa, and Neri, like all on the same day. And it's like, what the hell is Bama Rush? And why is it all over my TikTok? And I'm like, I don't know why it's on your TikTok.
Is it the pants store? Is that
yes,
the one that
yes.
they're all
And then you were
crazy about?
and then you were like, also, what is the pants store and should I buy stock in it? Because that's where it was hot to buy your OTTDs or whatever outfit of the day, OOTD. And that's where it was cool to buy your stuff. Yeah. And so but exactly. If you were one of the people who was assaulted by Bama Rush Talk, then like you see a group of girls from one house and it goes, oh, okay, that's the house for these girls.
Right.
That's the house for these girls. So it was just it was really cool to kind of. And like I said, that is looking at it through the lens of modern day. I mean, for all I know, in the 70s, sororities were more eclectic than they are now. I would only assume they weren't.
You know, at least when I was in college here in Miami, FIU, which is we've got two big schools here. We've got University of Miami and we've got Florida International University. UM is obviously, world famous, the football team, the baseball team, it's huge. I didn't know very many people who went there. I did know a few. You kind of have to be in a different tax bracket. To get into the University of Miami. Or not to get in, but to go.
Right. And then to be in Greek life is a whole nother
something else.
Yeah.
But I had quite a few friends that went to FIU, and a number of them rushed different fraternities. And even though I didn't attend that school, I knew what the how to put it, reputation of each fraternity was. So one was more of like the geeky academic one, and one was more of like the party one, and one was like the burnout one. And Florida law prohibits sorority houses. So there are sororities, but they don't have houses.
Really?
Yeah. Still to this day.
Interesting.
But frat houses exist. Yeah, tell me which is more debauched, and I'll tell you which one has a house.
There you go.
Here in the state of Florida, it makes an awful lot of sense. But so I do think that was kind of a thing, where what was it, Chi Lambda,
Chi Lambda Sigma, right down there.
Chi Lambda Sigma, that's it. Yeah, there. Fuck yeah.
But no, wait, that's Pi Kappa Sigma.
Chi Pac, yeah, Pi Kappa Sig, whatever. I forget who it was. Was it Claire's boyfriend that sees her dad, or someone else's? It was Jess's boyfriend.
It was Jess's boyfriend. Yeah.
And he says that he knows her. He knows the girls at that house, and he seems to be a somewhat more academic type, right?
Yeah,
he's there for piano. Yeah, so. I have a feeling that this isn't exactly like the party house. Right. So it's kind of weird that Barb would be there.
Yeah. So that's like I said, it was just, so that was a fascinating slice and like I said, it doesn't take anything away from the movie. It definitely adds to it to just have these characters who are eclectic. And I mean, you had mentioned just Barb and Margot Kidder, man, she's a scene stealer. Anytime she's there, and she's just constant. She puts everybody in their place. Like she's the John Wayne, the Charmin of those sorority girls. Rough, tough, don't take shit off no one. Right. Like it's just, it was really cool to see her. And it's funny because I always do think of Superman. And so I actually went and double checked it because I wasn't sure what year Superman came out. So it was interesting to go and see that this predated that.
Yeah, not by much. Superman was 78, and they worked on Superman for a while. So I think they started shooting in 76. So it's, more or less like right around the same time.
Right.
But Superman is when she really blew up.
Yeah, exactly. So we've talked characters, and now, as we are wont to do when we talk slasher movies, we're going to give Billy his own section that we're just going to call Billy. I mean, Billy is a unique type of horror killer in the fact that he's a presence, but we never see him, right? He's this ambiguous evil that's decided to pick on these girls in this sorority house. We never see him, but he is omnipresent. He is, you can feel Billy in every scene of this movie from the very first scene, which is when you see him climb the trellis and go in. So when you look back and you think about Billy and you start to kind of line him up against these other guys, I mean, does it work that he, while setting the precedent, is still something very unique, or did you want more from Billy?
I think that we got exactly as much from Billy as we needed, because what's scary about Billy is not who he is, but how out of his mind he is.
Right.
And there's no better way to get that than by just hearing his voice, because the madness in his voice, and we get one shot of his eye. Right. And it's a rather insane looking eye. Like, he's got that crazed look in his eye.
Yes, sir.
Now, the interesting thing is that the studio didn't like the ambiguous ending.
Right.
And they were trying to strong arm Bob Clark into changing it so that Claire's boyfriend was identified at the end of the movie as the killer. So that at the end of the movie, once the police exit the room and Jess is laying there sedated, we see him. Right. And he's the one who says, we see him say, "Where's Agnes?" Because he comes into the room and then closes the door, and he tells her, "Where's Agnes?" So it was going to leave very little up to the imagination. And Bob Clark said, "No, that fucking sucks. I'm not doing it."
Right.
And thankfully, the studio didn't press the matter enough for him to have to leave and then ruin the film.
Right.
Because that's happened before. In fact, like my favorite Frankenstein movie in the Hammer series, the studio intervened. They were like, "Needs more sex." And he's like, no, it doesn't. They're like, no, it needs
specifically
more
more Frankenstein sex.
Yeah, so they shot a rape scene.
Jesus.
Between Dr. Frankenstein and and it was like it comes way out of nowhere and it fucking ruins the movie. I've tried to push it out of my mind, and I just like, okay, that didn't happen. It's not there.
Right.
And then I watched the rest of the movie. So I'm glad they didn't do that, because that ambiguous ending, because we now know who Billy isn't.
Yes. Yeah.
We still don't know who he is, because it could be Claire's boyfriend, but it could be fucking anyone.
Correct. It's so weird, because what's really interesting to me about this idea of never really finding out who the killer is if they had revealed it, and a movie were to be made now where there was an obvious slasher throughout the entire film, and then at the end we never found out who it was, it would be people would be raving about how revolutionary that was, and they left it up to your imagination, and now you got to go to bed at night wondering who it was, blah blah blah. And what's funny is, even though this movie came out almost 50 years ago, if you were to make a movie where you did that now, how many of these people would talk about how revolutionary it was that you left the ending ambiguous? Yeah. And so he laid the groundwork for this amazing thing that at the time couldn't be fully appreciated, because the genre of slasher is a dude that we know didn't exist. The idea of leaving it ambiguous and making it seem like you had the right guy until the last minute is so freakishly ahead of its time. To blaze the trail with something that is going to outshoot anything people do for so long with the genre is insane. And so I think that that's great. And I think that one of the reasons it works so well is because if all we have of Billy is the insanity encompassed in these phone calls, and we can't put a face to it. That is scarier. There is nothing they could have put, no person, no mask, nothing they could have put on screen than is going to be scarier of you trying to imagine what the person who is making these phone calls looks like.
Yeah.
And that's so good. That makes it this incredible thing where you're trying to think through the craziest people you know, the craziest movie characters that you can think of, and you're trying to put them in the shoes of Billy making these phone calls. And could could such and such a person be that crazy? And so if you listen to true crime stuff or whatever, and you got this you've got this catalog of serial killers, you start running through them, and you're like, man, this is Ed Gein. Like, could Ed Gein do, and you start just, what you create inside your head becomes this horrifying amalgamation of just the worst people you've ever known and or heard of. And it becomes this untouchable movie monster that would have been completely dispelled and ruined if they had put a face on Billy that we knew. And for that, like, we can never thank Bob Clark enough for sticking to his guns on that one, because that ending, man, for the police to, yeah, good job, guys, we did it, put him behind bars, exactly what we thought it was, he's dead now,
Right.
And then just to have that ending where the phone is just ringing. And am I wrong in that I thought I saw a person that you couldn't see come out the front door of the sorority house during the credits?
I think it was a police officer.
Oh, okay, it was a police officer. Okay, well, but still, like, so that wasn't him. I was thinking, like, man, this dude knows the house is empty, he's gonna have a cigarette. But it was, just the idea.
That's a lot of killing for one day. I need me a break.
Woo, I am burned. It's time to visit Marlboro country. And so, but it's just, it's so good, and it's so fascinating. And that is something that I did not remember about this movie. So as it ended, and I'm sitting there going, Peter's not the killer. She didn't kill him. And I'm looking, and I'm like, there's not a lot of time left here. And modern horror fan brain is going, how are they going to wrap this up? How are they going to wrap this up? And then they fucking don't. Brilliant. I mean, it's so good.
I like a proper ending to a movie, because something like, say, Friday the 13th, for example, the first Friday the 13th.
Okay.
That's got a definitive ending.
Yes.
And I think it's a great one. Just like part 4 has a very definitive ending. Michael's dead.
Yeah, okay.
Not Michael, Jason. He's dead, and that's it. It ends there. However, if you leave it open, when in fact you were never really certain that he was the killer in the first place,
right?
It's all circumstantial. It then becomes that much more terrifying.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, is he coming for me? And that's we have to remember that though today movies are seen primarily in our homes, we stream them, right? Back in 1974, this was done for people to watch in a movie theater.
Right.
In fact, movies weren't really played on TV at all. Like you got like old 1930s and 40s movies that were replayed on TV on Saturdays. And that was it. So like a movie was a movie-going experience. So like you as the audience together were left with this, who was he? And you're talking about this stuff after the movie.
Yeah.
It was all part of the experience. Something that, if you're a teenager today, if you're in your like early 20s today, you kind of missed out on that.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. But I don't know about you, but I remember, every Saturday we went to the mall. We saw a movie, whatever it was, whether it was a horror movie, an action movie, a comedy, it didn't fucking matter. And even when you had seen all the movies that were out, you still went to the mall, you still saw a movie, and afterwards you went to like Johnny Rockets or some shit, and you ate cheese fries and you had a milkshake because that's all the fucking money you had, right? And you just talked about it.
Yeah.
And if your friends were like real film nerds, you talked about like some of the other stuff you picked up on in the movie. Like, oh yeah, it reminded me of like Clerks, and that reminded me of like, this movie or that movie. That's part of the experience here. That you have to view it through the lens of someone watching the movie in 1974. I think also for a lot of people, the significance of the calls coming from the house is lost on them, because today you got cell phones.
Yes.
And I can call you from like right next door to you. You know, I could be in that window, back window, waving at like, hey, what's up? Pick up the phone. I'm calling you. That meant something back in the 70s.
Right.
And so that makes Billy all the more terrifying because he's right under your nose.
Yeah.
It shouldn't make sense. Very few houses had more than one phone line. So to have the call come from within the house and you not know about it, I mean, that moment still makes me, no matter how many times I've seen it, and I've pretty much seen it every Christmas since I saw it about 10 years ago. I still like, I get tight.
Right.
I'm like, oh, fuck, he's there. He's this guy that's been calling and saying these things to you. The insanity of what's going on, like none of it makes sense, and it's clearly all like some sort of traumatic thing that happened to him.
Right.
That he's taking out on you. Yeah.
Horrible.
Who's fucking Agnes?
Right.
Was it his sister? Did he kill her? Was this like, do we kind of get like a Michael and what was Michael's sister's name? Was it Judy?
Oh my God, I can't remember. I spend so much time arguing with people about who's not his sister.
Right. Yeah. But is it like kind of like that where like he killed his sister? And was she a baby? Was she older? Why was he alone? The father seems to know that something was wrong with Billy from the beginning, and didn't seem to be trusted because he tells
Judy.
The mom, it was Judy. Okay, yeah, I thought so. Really, all I remember about Judy is her boobies.
Fair.
It's almost all you see of her.
Yeah.
So, but he's having conversations with himself as different people,
right?
And each voice sounds different. So the father's talking to the mother, like, "Why did you leave him alone with her? What's the fucking story here with Billy?" There's so much here. You could make a whole nother movie just on Billy and have that movie end with him walking up, climbing up the trellis to get into the attic.
Yeah.
And I'm in.
Oh yeah. No, without a doubt. It's one of the things about the ambiguous ending of this movie that's so good is 9 years later, right? 83 is Sleepaway Camp. Like 9 years later, we get this movie that has the complete opposite ending. This movie has got this ambiguous ending. You don't know who the killer is. But it's all very peaceful and calm. Mm-hmm. And then 9 years later, we take this idea of not knowing who the killer is for such a long time. Then at the last second, giving this freakish reveal and then freezing, this horrifying image and just keeping it right there. So just in that 9 years, we get such a cool evolution of the horror and slasher genre. Yeah. And because that's what I thought while the credits were rolling. And I was sitting there, thinking about the fact that I didn't know anything about Billy. And then I still wasn't 100% what was going on. I was like, man, this ending is the polar opposite of Sleepaway Camp.
Yeah.
which I thought was I really enjoyed that. It was, man, he's a wild ass idea. Like the idea of the killer that you never find out. I love it. I think it's great.
There's some keystone slashers that come after this, shortly after this, that I think like you need to look at to see how the evolution of the tropey slasher killer comes from.
Right.
Because you get Michael, from the very beginning, it's Michael, you know who he is, and you see him almost the whole time. So it's like almost the complete opposite. Like John Carpenter, being a fan of this, knew what worked and decided to try something entirely different.
Right.
But then you have Sean Cunningham with Friday the 13th doing something really, really similar. And then like, it's like, okay, I think it's this guy. Everyone keeps talking about this Jason guy, and then when the mom comes in at the end, like most people are like, oh, she's here to like help find Jason or whatever.
Right.
And then, bam, she's the fucking killer. And so that's a very different approach to like the slasher killer as well. And then we have Sleepaway Camp 2 years after that. So I really love looking at movies that kind of help establish a subgenre, because as they're creating the tropes, they're also like experimenting, and doing new like out there things. I don't think that we have another slasher ever where the killer is left so ambiguous.
I was racking my brain trying to think of one.
There's always a reveal,
right?
And I think that a lot of that comes from the fact that this had no intention of being a slasher. It stole a lot, or I don't want to say stole, but it borrowed a lot from the Italian giallos, where it was really like the mystery was central to the plot.
Right.
And in fact, the plot itself was not terribly important. It was all that reveal at the end. Very much like a noir, where it was, to me, that's what the giallos were. Is it was just an evolution of the noir film, where, it was like some guy is gotten involved in some crazy conspiracy and he's got to find his way out. The giallo was just sexier and bloodier.
Yeah.
And this was the next step in the evolution, which is why you won't see it as the definitive first slasher. Like Halloween is often called that.
Right.
But it's all here in it.
Man, and one other thing that made me stop and think about what year some movies were released. There's a moment in this film that made me go check and double check what year Empire Strikes Back came out, which is 1980. And I was pretty sure of that, but I did go double check. One of the most iconic moments in Empire Strikes Back is Leia, I love you, Han, I know. Yeah. And Jess dropped that on Peter in this movie. Mm-hmm. It was so good. Like I was like, wait a minute, that's Han and Leia's line. I was like, this is 6 years before that. And it was so good. And it was reversed. Like it was so great. That was such a cool moment after he's ranted and raved and he drops the I love you and she just drops I know. And it's like, oh shit. That's so cool. Like it was, and again, like,
and he's unfazed by it. So know that this has happened before, where he's trying to get that "I love you" from her, and he never gets it.
Exactly. But yeah, I immediately was like, no. Pretty sure Empire was 1980. Gonna go double check. Okay, no. So Empire did it not first. Cool.
Yeah. Well, and the same with the calls are coming from the house. This predates When a Stranger Calls.
Right.
Most people think of When a Stranger Calls because, I mean, it's in the title of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And there's definitely a lot of this in When a Stranger Calls, at least in the first half of it. Have you ever seen it?
I have not seen When a Stranger Calls. I know of it, but and honestly, before I kind of got into this movie, like I said, a lot of it surprised me. I did associate with the calls. The calls are coming from inside the house with When a Stranger Calls.
Yeah, and it's natural because of the title of the movie. But this is another way in which like this movie helps set so many of those tropes, and a lot of it is Billy, because if you look at what defines Billy, I mean, you go back to any slasher and it's there. You
Yeah.
know, it's the traumatic event that triggers something in the killer, whether it's in My Bloody Valentine or The Prowler or I mean even Friday the 13th.
Right.
You know, it's all there. It's some sort of traumatic event. It triggers them and it's like, now I must kill.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so, you know, for as much as we've talked about this movie, the reason that we are doing it in December is because 'tis the season, right? I mean, we're in December. We're looking at Christmas movies. I mean, in a movie where Black Christmas is in the title, regardless of trying to be released on TV as A Stranger in the House or whatever they were going to call it. It's called Black Christmas.
Yeah.
So for as much as this movie defines and just elevates the idea of horror and the slasher, I mean, how does it work as a Christmas movie?
I think that it has an undeniably Christmas feel to it. What's really interesting is that everyone is going home for Christmas,
Right.
which kind of sets up this idea that people can be missing and you don't really think too much about it. Like, you know, Claire's gone. No one has seen her for a day and no one really thinks too much of it. They're like, oh yeah, she was going to go meet her dad.
Yeah.
Okay, great. You know, that's the perfect setup for me to kill this woman now, because no one's going to be looking for her for at least a day. What's really interesting is the way that like families play into this, because Christmas, just like Thanksgiving, is such a family centric holiday,
Right.
And yet so many people can't stand their families. I hate to put it that way, but like the idea of like sitting down for Thanksgiving dinner with your family, like with the entire family, that's a horror story in itself sometimes.
It can be.
Especially on an election year.
Yeah.
So I really like how family dynamics are played up in this. For someone like Claire, who seems to have a pretty strong relationship with her family, wants to keep that strong bond with her family. She's discovering who she is, right? She's got, you know, the peace sign poster with the people fucking, you know, so she's kind of getting, she's getting to a place where
she's a groovy chick, man.
Yeah, she's a groovy chick. You know, but then we've got someone like Barb, who like calls her mom a gold-plated whore, you know. And then we have someone like Jess, whose concept of family is defined by her and her alone, you know, by saying that she's going to abort the child, that she doesn't want to marry Peter. She takes family into her own hands. So although it isn't strictly Christmas related, I do think that the theme of family, which is present in every single Christmas movie,
right?
You know, even Die Hard. All right,
there it is.
Yeah, I think that it's integral to the Christmas movie. This idea of family and this idea that these girls have created their own family here, their own family dynamic, where you do have like the person that you're slightly afraid of, but you also like really like Barb, and then there's the one who's like the easy target, like Claire, and then you have the one that kind of like is the glue that keeps everything together in Jess.
Right, she was definitely the peacemaker.
And is it Andrea, who is just like, guys, we got to figure shit out. We, you know, the more neurotic one.
Or is that Phyllis?
Phyllis, that's it. Yeah, it is Phyllis. Thank you. And there's a lot represented here, you know, even in Miss Mac, you know, who it's like, you know, oh, okay, I guess mom's drinking again, you know. There is family here, and maybe there's commentary on like what Christmas has become. You know,
right.
We've talked about this before. I'm not a religious person. The religious aspect of Christmas means nothing to me. But I grew up hearing about like the commercialization of Christmas and how, you know, the the reason for the season had been lost, and all of that.
Yeah.
And if that's what you believe in, fine, that's great. But I think even moving away from that religious aspect of Christmas, the idea that this is a holiday where like it's a time to spend with your family, where you sit around the Yule log and you drink hot cocoa and you just spend time with each other. It's
Right.
a time to go and visit grandma and spend time with grandma. When's the last time we sat down and had dinner with grandma? I don't know. She usually ends
Probably
up
last Christmas.
taking her clothes off and dancing around naked, and it's fine because it's grandma, right? So that's kind of been lost, and the 70s is around that time when that was happening, right? Because when you think of like other movies that were released in the mid to late 70s, there's a lot of commentary on consumerism and materialism, and that's definitely some of that like blowback of the hippie movement, where it's like,
Right.
okay, maybe we did take it a step too far, but also you suck, so maybe this is commentary on that, where it's like we're killing each other here to have like Christmas, when really
Right.
all we need to do is just care for your fellow neighbor.
Just be here and hang out. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is undeniably a Christmas movie for all of those reasons. I mean, a majority of the soundtrack of this movie is Christmas carols playing in the background. There's definitely no argument here for this is just a movie that takes place at Christmas.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great things here. You were talking about the idea that when people are leaving, that's a reason. Miss Mac gets killed, but she had just said, "Oh, I got to meet my sister for Christmas. I might not be here when you get home," so it wasn't a big deal when she wasn't there. The idea that it's Christmas sets up so many things that happen in this movie. It makes it work. The girl being distracted by the carolers, which we can kind of only assume might be when Billy snuck out and killed the cop in his car, right?
Yeah.
Just that there are so many directly Christmas things that are happening here, and I think that Billy taught us one of the most important lessons about Christmas in this movie when it comes to Miss Mac, and that is that anything's a Christmas ornament if you put a hook in it. I mean, he just strings her up, pops her on there, and she's just hanging out for Christmas. And that was the last we heard of her, right? I mean, there's a lot to kind of break down with it. And I think that you did it beautifully. Like, I don't have a ton to add there, because that was kind of the feeling I got was, you've got Barb, who's not excited to go home and see her family. You've got a couple of these girls who don't seem like they are going home to their family. They don't, maybe they don't have family to go home to. Maybe it's just far, all sorts of reasons that could be there. But in the beginning of this movie, it really is established that these girls are a family. And that comes across in how genuine and loving that moment is when they give Miss Mac the frock. And they simultaneously are proud of themselves for giving her this gift, while also understanding how hilariously bad it is. Because I think that that's something that we've all done, either with, your actual family. You buy your mom or dad something that you're like, they're going to hate this, but they're going to hate it so much that everyone's going to get a good laugh out of it.
Right.
Right. Or maybe you're that person who, without attaching your name, put a dildo in the Secret Santa. And it's just for that moment when you're going to be sitting there surrounded by a bunch of teachers and they open it and you've got to catch the horror on everybody's faces.
Yeah.
Also a delightful Christmas prank for anybody who may have a chance to play Secret Santa. What I'm saying is, there's a lot of really good traditions here. There's, back when we did Season of the Witch, Peter had a really good point, which is, how many of these Halloween movies do you guys watch, and do you talk about where the central idea is Halloween? And I think that this, and last year we did Krampus, really take the fact that it's not even just a horror movie that takes place at Christmas. It's a movie that takes place because of Christmas,
Right.
because these things are allowed to happen. And I think that cements it as a Christmas movie.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, man. To me, and you mentioned it earlier. This was the first part of a Christmas double feature for you with A Christmas Story.
Yeah.
To me, this is very much a Christmas movie. I typically don't watch this movie outside of the Christmas season,
Right.
because to me, this is standard Christmas fare. There's certain Christmas movies that we watch together as a family. I always put on Christmas Vacation. That is my favorite Christmas movie. We watch Home Alone together.
Dude, I watched Jingle All the Way yesterday.
Jingle All the Way is my son's favorite.
Love
so
it
he
so
and I
much.
watch it together all the time. He's got a Turbo Man. I've got a Turbo Man. I've got an original one from like 96 or whatever. He's back here somewhere. I don't think you can see it. Actually, wait, let's see. Maybe you can see the Turbo Man there. Where's Turbo Man?
Where are you, Turbo Man?
Let's go on a little tour. There he is.
Oh, I see
There's
him back
Turbo
there.
Man.
Yep.
Yeah, there he is. Yeah, so I love Christmas movies, and to me, this is just as Christmas as Jingle All the Way. This is just as Christmas as fuck it, I'm gonna say it. It's just as Christmas as It's a Wonderful Life or White Christmas. I love the fact that it's called Black Christmas because it does make you think of some of these classics like White Christmas.
Yes.
And to me, that's part of what makes it special.
Yeah. I love it, man. It is definitely going to be part of my Christmas rotation now.
That makes me happy. It warms the cockles of my heart.
There we go.
Yeah. In a way that only a burning Yule log would.
Ah, nice. Or maybe some eggnog with a little bit of Crown Royal in it. That warms me up.
Do you put cinnamon in your eggnog?
Yeah. I mean, if nothing else, for the aesthetic of having it on top, I'll toss a little bit on there. I don't. As long as it's eggnog and whiskey, I'm good.
We Latinos have something that we call coquito. And it's kind of like an eggnog. Think of it as eggnog, but with rum.
Okay.
Yeah. Quite good.
I can see that being good.
Yeah. We got to get together, man. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, this leaves us with really only one thing left to do, which is to rate the fucking movie, right? And so we have decided to go with a possible 5 gold-plated whore mommies. So
good.
So Daniel, out of a possible 5 gold-plated whore mommies, how many gold-plated whore mommies do you give this?
Man, so as I watched this and didn't know where it was going, that rating just kept growing. And it's interesting because I usually sit here and say, this has been banging around in my head for 24 hours. But as soon as the movie ended and I'm just sitting there watching the credits roll and the Christmas carols play and just this live action shot of the house that's, by the way, basically the exact same shot that we opened the movie with, and everything comes full circle. I knew immediately that this was going to be 5 of whatever we rated it. So, I mean, this is 5 gold-plated horror mommies, man. This movie is a trailblazer. This movie is scary. This movie is fun. It has memorable and interesting characters. It has some great actors and actresses portraying those characters. I, honest to God, cannot think of a flaw in this movie. It was so good from beginning to end. I even love just that stocky block letter Black Christmas that they just throw up there at the beginning. It felt right. From beginning to end, there was never a moment that took me out of this movie. There was never a moment that I felt like it didn't fit. Everything was so good. I immediately knew when it was over It was going to be 5, and it absolutely is. It is such a fantastic a Christmas movie, horror movie, just all of it. It's so good.
It's just a good movie.
Yeah.
There are some movies that I think transcend the genre that they're in. Daniel and I were talking about the British Film Institute's top 100 movies,
right,
that they came out with for this year, and there were a couple movies that were being spoken about. Casablanca is one of those that you mentioned, and Casablanca is definitely a romantic drama. That's what it is. But I feel like it transcends romantic drama. It's also a war movie. It's also a thriller. It's also noir. It's got a lot going on, and it is all those things, and it's none of those things. It is just movie.
Right.
The Princess Bride is another one of those where, like, yeah, it's fantasy. Yeah, it's romance. But it's more than that.
Yeah.
It's much more than that. And I think that Black Christmas is one of those movies where, yes, it's a Christmas movie, and yes, it's a horror movie, but it's more than just that. It is just a really good movie. This is a movie that I would recommend to anyone.
Yep.
Absolutely anyone. And watching it again, I was unsure if Lincoln could watch it, because he likes to watch these movies with me, and we weren't going to have time to watch it together before, but I found time here and there, and I do think that maybe he can watch it. Some of those phone calls are a little extreme, and I don't want to have some of those conversations
right
with him. But like I know he would love it.
Right.
And if my 8-year-old could love it, number one, that says something about my parenting style, and I'm really sorry for the amount of money he's going to have to pay.
He'll tell his therapist about it someday.
Yeah. But I feel like my grandmother would also really like this movie.
Right.
So if you go from 8 to 80, and there's something for everyone there, like, that's just a really good fucking movie. Not Christmas, not horror. You don't have to qualify it. It's just a good fucking movie. And that's what this is for me. I mean, it's a 5. I saw this after I had seen a lot of other slasher movies. I was a slasher fan basically from the time I was old enough to watch movies. And this is up there with the best of them. There's very few slashers that I don't like. They're really bad.
Yeah.
But like, even the bad ones, there's something to enjoy in them. But like, I put this on like that upper tier, that upper echelon of The Prowler. I put it with My Bloody Valentine. There's very few that I think move past that kind of like really high tier, but not the highest tier. Like, this is top shelf.
Right.
This is top shelf. This is not Johnny Walker. All right. This isn't Black Label. This is the Blue Label.
This is Blue Label. Yeah.
This is Blue Label. Yeah, which I do think is overrated.
I've only had it once. I mean, it was really good.
It's good,
but I've had better stuff that's not as expensive.
Smooth. But that's my point. For a $300 bottle, you can do an awful lot more.
Yeah.
And we'll end it on that. So thank you for tuning into Shiver, a whiskey podcast. If you enjoyed this, please go back and listen to some of our other ones, or you can check out some of our sister podcasts. There's a slew of podcasts. Basically, whatever you're into, there's something for you at the Geek Bro Network. There's all of our stuff, on our socials. You want to talk about that, Dan?
Yeah. So if you like us and you're not following us on all the socials, you can head to shiverpod.com, where you can find links to all of those things. Or to simplify it even further, we are at Shiverpod on everything now, even YouTube, which allows handles. We are at Shiverpod everywhere. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Twitter, I don't use as much. It's just there's so much noise on Twitter. It's really hard to cut through. But our show does go out live on Twitter. So if you're a Twitter user and you want to watch live, we do go live on our Twitter. So make sure you follow us at Shiverpod on all of those social medias.
Absolutely. Next week, do we want to announce what it is already or no?
Next week, we are going to go kind of polar opposite of
Yeah.
classic, genre defining, and we're going to go genre bending as we come to you next week with Anna and the Apocalypse.
Oh yeah.
It's
I've
part
been wanting to watch
Christmas.
this one.
It's part Christmas, it's part zombie, it's part musical. There's a little bit of everything in Anna and the Apocalypse. We're going to have some fun. Ish is supposed to be back with us next week. So we are definitely going to go the other way with it next week with Anna and the Apocalypse. So if you've enjoyed, make sure you tune in. I'm really looking forward to that one.
Absolutely. So on behalf of all of us here at Shiver, fight your